Corporate America seems to be benefiting from the tariff refund. In new court filings, the White House has actually paid back now $100 billion since the Supreme Court struck down President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs. Companies like Apple received more than $2 billion. Amazon says that it got $600 million, and Nike recovered $300 million. So how much did the average American receive out of this? Well, almost certainly nothing. But Trump is doubling down on this marquee piece of his agenda.
Over $100 billion in tariff money is now being refunded to American businesses. And if you're wondering whether any of that money is going back into the pockets of ordinary Americans, the answer is probably going to frustrate you. The Supreme Court has ruled that certain tariffs implemented during the Trump administration were illegal, forcing the government to return billions of dollars to the companies that originally paid those import duties. But here's the part that I think is going to make a lot of people angry. Those businesses are getting their money back, while the consumers who ultimately paid higher prices because of those tariffs aren't automatically getting anything. And this raises a much bigger question about Trump's entire tariff strategy. If businesses pass those additional costs on to consumers through higher prices, then who actually benefited from the tariffs in the end? Because now you've got corporations getting refunds while everyday Americans are still dealing with the higher prices those policies helped create. Now, if you're new here, I'm Bradley Hostin, and this is The Bradley Hostin Show. If you enjoy honest political commentary, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. As usual, let's watch the clip, and then I'll give you guys my thoughts afterwards.
Corporate America seems to be benefiting from the tariff refund. In new court filings, the White House has actually paid back now $100 billion since the Supreme Court struck down President Trump's Liberation Day tariffs. Companies like Apple received more than $2 billion. Amazon says that it got $600 million, and Nike recovered $300 million. So how much did the average American receive out of this? Well, almost certainly nothing. But Trump is doubling down on this marquee piece of his agenda.
You're here to talk about the economy.
Right.
What's your big message? You want to leave one takeaway with this crowd. What is it?
So tariffs have been incredible. We've taken in hundreds of billions of dollars. Supreme Court gave us a little shot, but we're allowed to do it in a different manner.
That is being challenged, by the way, that he can do it in a different manner. But I mean, Trump is not going to learn. And I think the optics of this are pretty bad. You know, these corporations are basically getting a massive windfall. They did absorb a lot of those costs, some of them that were passed down to consumers. And if you bought something from overseas, you're not ever probably seeing that money again.
No, I'm not getting any of the money back on my bundles, and that's okay.
Right. All the shopping that you've been doing, Yemisi, you're not going to get that money back.
And I don't know how businesses, especially small businesses, are supposed to even get that money down to the consumers, because if I'm a business, I'm scared in this economy. I'm keeping the cash that I have for my cash reserves. I've probably overextended on some business loans that I need to pay back. I mean, I think a lot of people are just trying to catch up. There's not an excess to give more to the consumer.
The other thing that stands out is the speed at which this is happening. The Supreme Court decision was February of this year. Within less than 6 months, they gave out $100 billion.
And that's actually not even close to the total.
Yeah.
Because that's really just from the beginning of this year. It's a phased process. So there's a lot more money that's going to go out.
My mother
the door.
broke her ankle. It's 3 months with Medicare. We're trying to get reimbursed for a $300 x-ray. You need to fill out 2 forms, have 7 receipts. You have to sign something in blue ink, witnessed by a Hare Krishna during a full moon, and then you have to have her left ankle notarized. Like it's so set up for the corporations and that top 1% against all of the average Americans, and this is another example of that, unfortunately.
J.D. Vance was on Fox News tonight, and he was actually calling out the socialists who are running in races across the country. But here's what he said about socialism. Listen.
This is exactly what El Sayed and these limousine socialists are actually selling to the American people. They're not promising you industry. They're not promising you good jobs. They're not promising self-sufficiency and a good industrial economy. What they're promising is redistribution. Again, we've seen this in Europe and in the United States. The idea that you can build real prosperity by just redistributing assets from one group to another group, that's not how you build real prosperity.
I mean, it seems like it's redistribution for me, but not for thee, because they literally said they were going to use the tariff money to reimburse farmers who were hurt by the tariffs. They also put tariffs on the economy, and guess what? We lost manufacturing jobs in that time.
But again, the loss for the Trump administration was the Supreme Court case. The Supreme Court decided this issue. The case was brought by, roughly the same attorneys general who are now bringing the case against the new Trump tariffs. This is the decision they sought. This is the relief they sought. This is what the actual appellants to this case wanted to happen. And now the same people are saying, well, I can't believe the money's going back to these corporations.
Well, that's because they broke the law.
That was always going to happen. The problem here is that Trump believes in tariffs. There's no question about that. He thinks they're doing the right thing. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. We'll save that for another day. The point is, once he lost the case, it's out of his control. This is what the court mandated, and here we are.
Actually, the mechanism by which they reimburse is completely within their control.
Right.
The court just said the tariffs are illegal. They decide how they reimburse, and they've created a process that makes it possible for large corporations to get reimbursed.
You have to give it back to the importers. The importers are some of these major corporations.
But if you are a regular person,
you didn't import and pay the tax. You paid it downstream. Yes, I understand that.
Some people did, and it's
the money had to go back to the importers. That was the decision.
To get that money back.
This is the greatest redistribution of wealth in the history of the United States, and it is coming from regular, everyday Americans who are just trying to pay their bills, pay their grocery bill, buy a car, make sure that their kids have everything they need when they're heading back to school in the fall, and it is going into the hands of people who already have so much.
Especially when the economy's hurt because of the Iran war. If anybody needed it now, but
the average person lost $2,000 last year because of
the government can call all these companies in and go, look, you need to filter some of this down to the people. Figure it out, and we'll figure it out with you. And that's a choice that they're not doing that.
And Donald Trump has the influence to do that.
Some companies, to be fair, are saying, either if you're Amazon, because Amazon sells, they have both business merchants and consumer merchants. So they're going to try to give back some tariffs to certain customers. But other companies are hedging against future cost increases by saying they're going to use the tariff refunds to keep prices lower. Because guess what? Trump is trying to keep the tariffs. Yeah. And he's being sued, as Joe pointed out, by 25 states who are basically arguing that these new tariffs, are a pretext for the same old tariffs that are going to raise prices on Americans yet again.
Well, there's no two ways about it that tariffs built our country. Like when you look at Mount Rushmore and you see all the presidents there, every single one of them were high tariffs. Like you have to have a way. If you're going to do tax, you can do it a multitude of ways. You tax foreign imports rather than giving income tax to people, and it creates one of two things, right?
That was in a completely different economy. My point is the world economy doesn't work that way.
And
by
so
the way, things were already so expensive.
So there's a case to be made that you have to adapt tariffs to the 21st century. And Jameson Greer's not doing a great job. The way he's done it, he's lost every case that he's done. Like, we got to be better about this, because here's the deal, guys. You got to be thinking 10, 20 years in the future.
You can't blame Jameson Greer for this.
Has to go, but America, but one way or another, America has to go back to being a nation that builds and manufactures, and tariffs are one of the main ways you do that.
Okay, why has manufacturing declined? I mean, you can't just I get that talking point, and
Republicans
you said it.
sold out
the
our country for 30 years.
Administration says it all the time, but the facts don't back up a manufacturing renaissance. In fact, manufacturing investment has gone down compared to the Biden years. How do you justify that when you're claiming the tariffs are supposed to bring back manufacturing?
No, I'm saying the vision you have to think of for the next 20 years. Why is
I'm not talking vision. I'm talking reality.
Right,
what is the reality of how tariffs have affected the economy? Some industries might benefit in the short term from tariffs, but in the long run, the broader economy is going to suffer. That is what we have seen happen.
Tariffs work.
To do what?
The way that
to
the
raise
Trump
prices
administration
for
is
Americans?
currently going about it
in the long run,
not successful.
Tariffs
and
work by raising
redistribute
prices for consumers.
No.
That is how they work.
And
They work by incentivizing domestic
because we've
production
allowed
when they
lower
work.
prices.
Where have we incentivized domestic production?
That's why I'm saying Jameson Greer, he's the guy in the job.
It's not Jameson Greer's fault.
Better policy.
It actually hasn't happened.
But the bottom line is the concept of tariffs, when properly applied and adjusted to the 21st century, work. And nobody's answered my question, which is, how are you going to return America to manufacturing and being
you're claiming that it works, but you're providing absolutely no evidence.
Is China builds. China make stuff, guys.
Carolyn, no,
make
Where's
stuff.
the evidence
hang
that
on.
tariffs have worked?
Right, there's zero evidence that tariffs work, but at the end of the day, Donald Trump was elected because he promised, what did he say 1,000,000 times on the campaign trail? On day one, everything will get less expensive. Your grocery bills will go down, your car payment will go down, and the first thing he did was to make everything more expensive, and that was before the war in Iran. He has destroyed an economy that was already on shaky ground.
So this is where things get really interesting for me, because when you actually break down what happened here, the people who ultimately paid the price don't appear to be the same people getting the money back. Donald Trump's tariffs were presented as a way of protecting American workers, strengthening American businesses, and making other countries pay for doing business with the United States. But tariffs don't magically make foreign countries hand America free money. The cost of importing those goods gets paid by businesses, and businesses can then pass those costs on to consumers through higher prices. And that's exactly why this $100 billion plus refund is so interesting. The companies that originally paid those tariffs are now getting their money back because the tariffs were deemed illegal. But what happens to the American family that went into a store during that period and paid more for the exact same product because those tariff costs had already been passed down to them? That's the part that doesn't sit right with me. Because if you're going to tell the American people that tariffs are necessary because they're going to protect them from higher prices and strengthen the economy, then you can't ignore what happens when those policies actually make things more expensive. And now we're seeing this strange situation where corporations can potentially recover the money they paid, while the average consumer who absorbed those higher prices has no automatic mechanism to get their money back. That's why I think this is much bigger than simply saying the government is refunding businesses. The real question is, who actually paid for the policy and who is benefiting from the reversal? Because if ordinary Americans paid higher prices for months or even years, and now corporations are receiving billions of dollars back, you can understand why people would look at this and ask, where's my refund? And that's especially important when so many American families are still struggling with affordability and the cost of everyday goods. For me, this is another example of why government policy can't just be judged by what it sounds like when it's announced. You have to look at who actually carries the cost and who ultimately receives the benefit. Let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comment section below. Do you think these tariff refunds should somehow benefit the consumers who ultimately paid the higher prices? Or do you think the businesses are rightfully entitled to the money being returned? As usual, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more news commentaries. I'll see you guys in the next one.